You'll know if you should buy Voidling Bound in the next 58 seconds. Here's your TLDR. Bottom line first. Voidling Bound is what happens when you take the generational breeding addiction of Pokémon, smash it together with the kinetic reflex-driven gunplay of Ratchet and Clank, and then add a dash of some highly unethical genetic manipulation from Spore. Unlike other titles that have been stuck in passive, menu-driven, turn-based combat for the past 30 years, the action is at the forefront here. You play as an interstellar space wrangler of sorts that uses neural mind melds to take real-time control of alien creatures on the surface of plague-ridden planets. Your job is to drop in, wipe out overwhelming swarms of a parasitic virus or murder bots, and reshape the battlefield in 4 to 15-minute bursts of chaos that lean either shooter or character action game, depending upon which Voidling you're playing. It is fast, and can hit a significantly higher skill ceiling than its peers in the genre, and it completely respects your time when it comes to the macro progression. And at a release price of $22.49 US or your regional equivalent, the value here is solid if you're a fan of the core loop. Plus, there's a demo, which carries over into the full game, so you can try it before you buy. Now, if all you wanted was that TLDR, cool, I get it, thanks for sticking around. Before you go, though, maybe hit the YouTube buttons and drop a comment on this twist on the character rancher genre. It shows the robots on the back end that this is a useful video and will push it to more people. And if you want a more detailed breakdown, stick around. Also, if you're new here, hi, I'm Squid. I cover primarily action and shooter titles with the occasional essay or gear review. And the rule here is maximum meaningful info with minimal reaction faces. So let's talk about the core gameplay loop. What is the game actually trying to be and why is it fun? Hatchery Games, a studio founded by veterans from both Skylanders and Borderlands, has built a highly specific dual-layer framework of sorts that balances creature collection and management with action-oriented third-person combat and some light exploration. A good portion of your time is going to be spent in a zero-combat spaceship hub, where you manage your roster, upgrade your base facilities, and let your benched creatures passively gain experience on a literal giant hamster wheel, so you don't have to grind all of them up from level 1. It's nice. The macro progression on offer here is brilliant. It uses a shared passive skill tree reminiscent of Path of Exile. When you unlock a node for one specific species, every creature of that bloodline gets that permanent buff, saving you hours of mindless grinding. And the rest is planetary deployment. These are instanced 4 to 15-minute snapshot missions where the game shifts into a snappy third-person character shooter or character action game, depending upon that specific Voidling's traits. And instead of a massive roster of hundreds of filler monsters, you get a compact lineup of 9 base species. But here's the trick. Each species functions as a completely distinct character class with its own animations and combat identity. You'll start off with a chicken-like Voidling. That's your hypermobile flanker that I built into a fire-spewing Uzi, like I was playing Robotron. Conversely, you'll also get things like a St. Bernard-looking tadpole critter that's a heavily armored close-range brawler that emphasizes burst damage and melee combat with AoE slam. The combat loop forces a tight rhythm of balancing your cooldowns, managing element-matching damage multipliers against specific enemies, and execution-heavy dodge rolls or things like barriers or parries. The only major pacing frustrations here that I encountered were the early game does take a little bit to get going. It's very much that Mario approach where, you're going to encounter one Goomba, and then you're going to encounter one block, and then you might encounter a Koopa. So just know that the ramp on this takes a minute. The map sizes can feel a little bit cramped at times. The mission types can get repetitive during long sessions, and you do get to hold down a button to skip the mind meld animation every single time you deploy, and that will get old. Moving on to art, audio, and vibes. Voidling Bound hits a very specific visual and auditory vibe that sets it apart from typical monster tamers. This won't be to everyone's taste, and that's fine. Visually, the game leans into a striking neon pastel palette that feels kind of like a sci-fi cartoon on acid. The planetary biomes are incredibly vibrant. Think glowing, saturated alien jungles under multi-moon skies. What's impressive here is how the art style directly serves the gameplay. The color theory is strictly color-coded. Enemies are immediately readable, silhouettes are clear, and these matter as you progress past early game and things tend to get a little bit hectic. It makes it effortless to identify threats and align your elemental counters, even when the screen turns into a total particle effects soup. Now on the audio front, Hatchery absolutely nailed the soundscape. Soundtrack is solid. Yeah, you might not go chasing these tracks down out of game to add to your gym playlist, but they serve the vibe and function of background music without becoming obtrusive. Sound effects are another story, though. While serviceable, I'd have liked to see a bit more variation to the attack sounds and perhaps a little bit more oomph and punchiness. Honestly, though, that's me looking for things to nitpick. Here, give the game a listen. Right, moving on to performance and settings. Because when you're juggling iframes and screen-filling bullet hell scenarios, engine stability is everything. Now, on my machine, which is 9800X3D and 5090, this was a solid 270-ish FPS on Ultra with negligible stuttering or notable frame drops. The frame graph was a gloriously boring flat line. It is exceptionally well optimized for desktop PCs, and across my playtime I had 0 crashes or anything related to the game that gives me pause on a technical basis. I do hear that it runs tolerably well on handhelds if you're willing to do some tinkering with the internal rendering resolution, like resolution scale, rather. Since the game is primarily CPU bound on those platforms. Now, full disclosure, I've not tested it on my OG deck because I wanted to get this review out to you quickly, so this is the result of some internet sleuthing and people on the internet lie. So your mileage may vary. Now, in terms of settings, the usual suspects are here. The only minor nitpick I have is that I'd prefer to have post-processing separated out into more granular options. FOV sliders are on full display for both the critter and the handler. That's nice, and it's good. Well done. The game plays well on both mouse and keyboard and controller, and offers rebinding options, which, depending upon your main genres, you may very well need to make use of. But the shooty ones tend to do really well on mouse and keyboard. The more melee, brawlery types tend to do really well on controller, at least in my experience. So let's talk about the things that wear you down over time. These are the small pain points that add up to increasing irritation, like that one mosquito bite on your ring finger knuckle no, that's not oddly specific and I'm not frustrated about it. It's not enough to be cranky, but you do notice it. The administrative downtime is real. And when you're culling genetically inferior creatures to clear box space, the cursor tends to completely reset to the top of the list after every single deletion. And if you're on a controller, this is both taxing and dangerous if you're not paying attention. Otherwise, that fire chicken that spews death might get set free. And, well, that's a problem for the immediate biome. And you, because now the thing that you've been leveling for the past 3 hours is now gone. Realistically, the bloat of creature management can become a bit of a chore, unless you're the type to just leave 8,000 critters in the hold and, let them Lord of the Flies it. Although I suppose Animal Farm might be the better analogy there. Now, if you're here for a deep, sweeping narrative or immersive role-playing, just walk away. The game has a fascinating premise involving a parasitic plague, but it abandons its storytelling almost entirely after the opening cinematic. You'll be reading dialogue quite a bit, and the plot exists solely as a coat of paint to get you into the mechanical sandbox. All right, wrapping things up with overall value, the Burrito Index, and verdict. So who is this game for? I'd say it's for the theory crafter who loves action combat. If you want to breed generations of creatures to compound their base stats and then use splicing to physically stitch body parts from one into the other and create this custom broken monstrosity, you'll be in heaven. Just remember, splicing permanently sterilizes the creature, which adds another layer of risk-reward management. As for the Burrito Index, which is where I contrast the price of a game with the enjoyment I'd get from an equivalent dollar amount of Al Pastor burritos, Voidling Bound is a strong 1.73 burritos. Now, considering the nature of combinatorics and the breeding system, in addition to just the baseline content, you're looking at least 25 to 30 hours of gameplay, which puts this at or below $1 US per hour of playtime. Salt in competent combat mechanics and opportunity for skill expression, and this one's solid. I'd say try the demo to see if the core loop hooks you, and if so, the full game will feed you more of that plus some. It's good. Now, if you made it this far, chances are you'll also like the video over there. Or at least that's what the robots at YouTube tell me. I've been BaldSquid. I'll see you next time.